Okay, we're all going.
All right. Hello, members of the Congressional Subcommittee on Climate Emergency Management. We are the Blue Team, and we're here to remind you that if California goes, we all go. Saving this state and the West Coast from climate disasters could save the world, and investing in our two-part plan for disaster mitigation is truly essential if the rest of this country wants to have any hope in mitigating climate change.
All right, so let me remind you what kind of impact California has on the entire U.S. economy. So starting with Los Angeles, it is the second biggest city in the United States. It's projected to have over 15 million people by 2040, and currently it has a 700 million GDP. So it's the second most valuable city in the United States, essentially, and it's growing. Secondly, the Bay Area. There are 9.3 million people expected to live there by 2040, and it has a $660 billion GDP, which is the 10th most valuable city in the United States. And within the Bay Area is probably the most, is the single most compelling reason to invest in climate change mitigation. Silicon Valley is the second largest growing metropolitan area in the United States, and it is the home of over 39 Fortune 500 company headquarters. It contributes $160 billion in GDP each year. And in addition, Silicon Valley startups are contributing to climate change innovation, and they need investment from philanthropists in order to create change for not only our country, but also the world. But they can't do this if they face just significant economic impacts from climate change-induced disasters every year. So that's why we need,
California and Silicon Valley specifically are a hub of innovation and potential hope for the future, and so we cannot ignore that. So, in summary, here's the truth. If we let climate disasters destroy California, we destroy a lot more than just one state. We destroy our best hope to tackle this problem in the future. Now, if you're not convinced, we're going to show you with the data what's actually going on the West Coast, and particularly throughout California. California has a serious water problem. There is a combination of severe drought and flooding happening in this area, and Carson's going to tell you a little bit about that.
So who heard about the drought in the last 3 years in California? Anyone not heard about that? Yeah, that was pretty bad, right? Well, this is a current map from 2017, January 3rd. You can see that there is still the most severe drought in the entire country going on in Southern California. So yay, it's raining in California. There's still a huge drought. There's nowhere near enough water there to replace the water that's been lost to the reservoirs already. 2014 was the worst drought year on record for California. A recent estimate by aerial surveys have shown that 102 million trees were killed in the last 3-year period of drought in California. That's $1.8 billion in timber revenue. And over the 3-year period, $12 billion were lost to the state of California from damages, just from the drought alone. We have a little interactive here just to show you a little bit about what happened throughout this period to the reservoir levels throughout California. So keep in mind, this is the fresh water that's available to the citizens throughout the state of California. And you can see in the background over the map the severity of the drought within the different regions. This is the first summer from 2013 when the drought first began. You can see the region just turns red. These reservoirs lose about half of their water capacity. So normally they're sitting around 80–90% capacity. They drop down immediately to about 40–45. And as the drought continues, they drop below 25% capacity. That leaves very, very little water available to the citizens throughout California. And this continues as a trend throughout the summers for the next 3 years. This is a serious, serious situation. And we were very lucky it didn't get any worse. Even more so, the snowpack throughout California is changing. The Sierra Nevada mountains hold certain amounts of snow that act as a bit of a buffer for this system. So yes, fresh water is available every summer from snow melting off the mountains, right? Well, that's what we like, actually, but that's not always going to be the case. We can see throughout the decades beginning in 1950, the greater level of purple here represents snow within the mountain range, but there is a large amount of snow throughout the winter packed up in these mountains, but it is changing. So this is the current levels, and you can see up here in the northern region that there's already a lighter shade of purple where it was very heavy about 50 years ago. And within the next 50 years, towards the end of the century, we see the snow dying out all across the Sierra Nevada mountains. By all predictions, we might not even have snow there by the end of the century. And that that completely removes the buffer on the system. There will be no more source of the snow melt for the groundwater from those mountains in case of these high temperature, high drought situations. So how do you talk about trends in drought, right? Because droughts can last several years, they can have varying intensities, but the drought is defined as a lack of precipitation leading to loss of water and a limiting amount of water for the state. So if we look at general temperature trends in California throughout the last century or so, what we see is a general trend upward with this purple line here representing the average. And we see within the last decade particularly a huge spike within temperature caused by changing climate systems. Alongside that, we see a great decrease in precipitation throughout the last century, coming up onto the 2000 to 2004 drought, which was the worst recent California drought prior to the one in 2014, the year after this IPCC model was made. What we expect is that within the next end of the century, we could be losing about 50% of all of the precipitation in North America. And California is going to feel this especially badly. So the prediction, within the next 20 years, California will see significantly less precipitation and reduced snowpack, which will deplete the water supply and create near consistent drought-like conditions. Basically, the biome of California will look a lot more like Arizona, and that's a bad thing for us.
So what happens after droughts? Then we have flooding. So some of you might have been paying attention to the Petaluma flooding. This started at the beginning of this month, and there was massive flooding in the city of Petaluma due to the atmospheric river, the Pineapple Express. There was over 400 home evacuations here. Rainfall patterns are changing, so we are going to see more days of extreme rain. That doesn't necessarily mean just rain, because we're in a drought, right? Extreme rain is the rain that we are not prepared for. So this graph here shows that over the next 20 years, this pattern is going to drastically increase. We have more extreme rain that will bring on the flooding that we are trying to get away from right now. Go ahead. So our prediction is that in the next 20 years, this is just reiterating what I just said, we have more periods of extreme rain, which means more flooding. Go ahead. And so these two charts are really important. So this is the population distribution of California. So we have our two largest populations here. We have the South Coast, which is San Diego kind of area, and then San Francisco. So we have 1 million people here and 3,400,000 people here. And then this is the value of the structures that we have in these cities. So we have $23 billion worth of economic value here, and then $130 billion worth of structures here.
We should mention the shading also indicates floodplains. The darker the shading, the more in danger of floods these areas are.
Yes, thank you. So this means we have $360 billion worth of damage in these areas alone. The California state budget in a year was $170 billion. We are not ready.
And then, okay, you have your droughts, you have your floods, and droughts kill the trees, floods loosen the soil. What's next, right? Landslides. We have a huge potential impact of landslides throughout California, which can be triggered by events such as extreme flooding, and also loss of vegetation leads to more danger within these regions. So what you can see along the west coast here is the highest level of susceptibility based on the slope class, as well as the strength of the soil holding the rocks together within these regions. This encompasses regions such as the Bay Area here and also the South Coast like we were just talking about. So how bad could these damages be, right? Couldn't be that bad, you know. In 2005, after a 15-day record rainfall, the La Conchita landslide happened, and it was actually a pretty extreme event. 10 people were killed, and 13 homes were not just destroyed, but pushed off of their foundations. Several others were damaged. In 1982, actually, there was heavy rainfall that led to landslides within the Bay Area. This is over 30 years ago now, 25 people were killed, and $65 million in damages were done. So what would a landslide like that cost us today in 2017? $2 billion to $4 billion per year would be needed to repair the damages from a severe landslide within the Bay Area. This is twice the California transportation budget for a single year, similar to ODOT. We aren't ready for a climate disaster of this caliber.
So we're really going to summarize what all of this means for the West Coast.
Yeah, so as Carson and Allie explained, floods, droughts, and landslides, they have crippling costs for the California economy, and they're shown to increase over the next 20 years and even into the later centuries. So this includes crippling costs for California. The federal and state budgets will be unable to recover from the costs of these events because we put those numbers into context for you. And also the current estimates don't include the opportunity costs that could be lost from the damage to the California economy.
And as if that weren't bad enough, we need to talk about the potential for climate change refugees. Currently in the world, there are nearly 50 million, and this crisis has not even begun. People are going to be flooding to the West Coast from other regions of the United States that are also affected by extreme weather events, and we can't have them leaving the West Coast as well. This is a global problem, and it's just absolutely imperative that we address it now. We're just not ready to handle what we've shown you with the data. So what can we do? That's what we're here to talk about. We're proposing a two-part plan to invest in the future of California so that California can invest in the future of the rest of the world. Our very cost-efficient plan begins to address this problem by combining investments in wastewater recycling and updating California's existing levee system. Virginia's going to tell us a little bit about the details of this plan.
So let's start with fixing the drought, or helping the drought. So right now, we're already investing in groundwater drilling, but it's expensive and eventually it'll run out. We are already investing in desalination plants, but they're highly inefficient and they're even more expensive. So wastewater recycling. It's half the cost of desalination, and it only costs $1 million to build and maintain a new plant for 20 years. It creates jobs and it's sustainable over time. So, and then Portland's treatment plant spends just $4,000 per day on 73 million gallons of water, as opposed to the same amount of money that's used to maintain just 2 golf courses in California currently. What we propose is building 500 new wastewater treatment plants in California, and it'll provide clean water for household environments in California. And this plan will cost $500 million. So for flooding, there's already currently a levee system in California, but it's very inefficient. There's already 56% are high hazard and will break in the event of an earthquake. And these levees are separating seawater from drinking water in California, so therefore even more drinking water will be at risk. So to update this levee system, it'll only be $2 billion for the whole state of California. And looking at it, for the city of New Orleans, they had to pay $14 billion to update their levee system after Hurricane Katrina. So, update California's current levee system to prepare for increase in floods. So that will only be $2 billion. And
All right, so the total potential damage that could come about in a worst case scenario, including droughts, floods, and landslides across the state of California, is $714 billion over the next 20 years. And also 7 million Californians, which is about 1/5 of California's population, could be displaced, so they won't have a home. And to put that into context, so we aren't ready. It's like 1/5 this pie not being there, or 1/5 of this sad pizza not
Just make
having
sure
a
you
home
really
in your
understand.
stomach, in case you don't get it.
Or
that
any
much.
one of your group members losing their home.
Exactly. They just don't have a home anymore. As opposed to the cost of mitigation that we are proposing with our wastewater recycling and our levy updates, it would only be $2.5 billion, which is 0.4% the cost of damage. No, they're not even close. It's the obvious choice is mitigation.
So by investing in this step toward climate change disaster mitigation, we could be taking a step towards being ready, because the honest truth is, right now, we absolutely aren't. This is an investment in the future of not just California, but the world. And when compared to the potential damage this state faces, the line of action forward is clear, our plan. This is a commitment to future solutions that could help your community too. If we let the West Coast alone bear the full brunt of this volatile and unpredictable climate change, the rest of us have no hope. Remember, if California goes, we all go. This is an investment worth making. Thank you.
Well, I practiced smoking a couple times. I didn't know.